You're listening to TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour with your host, the director of Dixie Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
Our regular listeners remember that just a couple of weeks ago I interviewed Rebecca over at Dissident Mama. Rebecca's the blogger at Dissident Mama, and she's always got some interesting things to say. Of course, we didn't get to nearly half of what we wanted to talk about in that interview. And so we said at the end of it that we'd have her back, and so that's what we're doing today. We're going to have Rebecca back, and we're going to try to pick up the conversation where we left off a couple of weeks ago. And let me just say that this interview kind of starts out slow, picks up speed. Toward the end of it, we were just having fun, and that's really what it's all about. I mean, if you can't have fun on the radio, then why bother, right? And if it's not fun, why would you want to listen? So that's what we do. We just had a lot of fun talking about some great stuff. And so I'm just going to put us right into the interview now. Well, I was going to say, even California's talking about secession now.
Yeah, please leave. Jeez.
And, you know, however many years ago there was the California Republic movement, and that was the small number of conservatives in the state who were talking about secession. But now it's the mass of leftists that are talking secession now.
Yeah, the Republic of Jefferson is those, the Northern California, like, farmers and all their kids have left because there's no job opportunities. I actually heard that guy on a podcast like a year ago, and he's like, now he doesn't want to secede. He doesn't want to go with California. He's like, no, like, we want to, like, y'all can secede and we can stay with the United States because, you know, he's like, which is worse? You know, Sacramento is killing us. You know, LA and San Francisco are killing us. So that's very interesting. I feel for those people, conservative-minded people who live out there. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. So you had mentioned that you're writing a book.
No, blog.
Oh, blog. I thought you said book. Okay. So what blog subjects do you have going on right now? What's in your head that hasn't quite made it onto the screen yet?
Oh, my gosh. Goodness gracious. Well, right now I'm trying to tie up my Puritan series, which is, I've done 3. I've got 2 more of those. Probably one of the things, I'm kind of just deer in the headlights here. I can see them all like on my laptop, and I'm like, what am I writing about? But one thing I want to do is how people are so ungrateful. The whole like victim oppressor thing, right? You know, that's how everybody's defined these days. You're either the victim or the oppressor. And all these people who think they're oppressed, you know, and I got complaints, you know, I understand. There are things to be upset about, but also how good we have it and how we have to look to the past to see that many things were done right to get us to the place where we had the prosperity to even care about any of this stuff, where we're not like working every day literally just to feed ourselves. You know, that's what gets me about these like Marxists. It's like you wouldn't even have the time to, you know, go out and be an activist if it weren't for capitalism. I mean, come on, you know. So I want to do something talking about how people are so ungrateful, and it's that whole entitlement mentality we have that we're pushing into young people, and that is toxic. And just to wake people up and kind of try to meet them and be like, I get it, I'm frustrated about things, but, you know, for the love of Pete, being constantly aggrieved is not a healthy thing, and it just feeds hostility and all that stuff. But if that's your God, I guess that's what they're going to do. So that's one of them. And, you know, I like to always go back to, I don't think I've actually really written one about anti-whiteness, you know, because you'll see on Facebook a lot of times, oh, boo-hoo-hoo, white people, so privileged, yet they're so oppressed. I mean, anti-whiteness, it is not a conspiracy theory. I mean, look at South Africa. That is coming to America if people don't stop saying anti-whiteness is a conspiracy theory. So really dig into it, and that'll be a very frightening, scary one to get into. But just, I've saved little tidbits from Twitter exchanges or seen people's Facebook posts, and that's just something I really need to flesh out, because I've touched on it a little bit when I wrote about my whole SBC thing, and I think the name of the blog was, I forget the name of it. Oh, what white people aren't worth saving anymore, or something like that. But I don't think I've ever really written one on that. And then, you know, the feminists. It's like you could write every day about how crazy they are and their hats and all the crazy things they want to do. And of course, guns, I did write one kind of talking about that recently. That was not the main crux of it, but it's that, common sense gun regulation means people being nice. No, you're not getting my guns, period. You will have to send a man with a gun to my house to get my guns, so right. Kind of like, I could blog all day long, you know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, if you want to blog on the SBC thing again, go to YouTube and go to the Dixie Heritage YouTube channel.
Okay.
And there's a series of videos, Southern Baptists for Southern Heritage.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
And I'm not for sure which video it is in the numbers, but there is a video, and I've got actual video footage of the convention passing its resolution condemning the battle flag.
Ugh.
And every so often I interrupt it with commentary and explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about a 45-minute video, and take a few minutes to watch it. But what you will see is that there was a federal judge who's actually very prominent in the convention. He was actually appointed by Bill Clinton.
Oh.
And so you would think he would be on the left.
Right.
But he was trying to explain how the entire process used to pass this resolution was disorderly, how it was not proper. And he was actually on the floor pointing out the procedural mistakes being made by the moderator and the parliamentarian to force a vote that the messengers did not want to take.
Huh.
And there was actually a motion on the floor to entertain a resolution not to even discuss the subject.
Right.
Couldn't even vote on they couldn't even vote on the one motion with the other motion on the floor. I mean, it's just, and it got to the point where they had to disgracingly remove a federal judge from the room.
Wow, I have got to watch that.
Yeah. And so, and then the vote is taken. And while the vote is taken, this federal judge is screaming from the back of the room.
Wow.
Yeah. And the vote is taken. And the camera pans. This is a video that somebody took with their phone.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
The camera pans the room. The messengers aren't voting.
Yeah.
Because everybody in the room knows that the whole thing is out of order.
It's wilder than I thought.
Yeah. And so there are only about a dozen people thousands of people in the room who could be voting, and only a few dozen do.
Right.
And then, of course, the moderator declares that it's this overwhelming passage, and the parliamentarian explains how everything was proper despite the disruption. And, of course, then the leadership start to get up and pontificate about what a great thing that just happened. But,
wow.
Yeah. But the whole thing was as queer as a $3 bill, as we used to say.
Yeah, I mean, you would not believe the number of white Southern Baptist ministers who have blocked me on Facebook, because after that whole thing, I would go on the offensive with them and ask them, about, black racism or whatever. Or I like using people's words against them, and people do not like that. And, oh my gosh, I've gotten blocked and those were probably the people in the room voting for this and sitting there like cowards and just being like, yay, I hope the numbers at my church grow. It's just, it's so self-serving, and it is not, white people are worthy of liking their history or talking about it, or it's an insult, I think, to black people that they are so sensitive that we have to guard our every word. I mean, I am not a black person, but I am a woman, and the whole thing with like men guarding their words and not being able to tell me a joke, tell me the dirty joke, for the love of Pete. It's probably funny, people are denying themselves. I don't know, like they are not, have no strength, and to me, I think that's an insult to people of color, that they can't handle certain things. Now, a lot of them say they can't, but I think, again, the normal ones need to speak up, and some of them do. There are plenty of, what do they call them, based people of color, who talk about this stuff and how ridiculous it is and insulting it is. But I would love it if more people did that, and same with women. There are plenty of like anti-feminists out there. But, just the cowards who just let this stuff happen, all for self-serving reasons. It is not for the glory of God. And I will watch that video because that sounds amazing. And that reminds me that I want to start doing interviews this year because, I was trained in journalism and I love finding out other people's stories. So I think I want to start interviewing just interesting people from either the Southern tradition cause or anti-feminists or just cool libertarians or anybody on the right who, wants to stand up to the Leviathan. So that's probably something I'm going to do too.
Well, that would be interesting, and I look forward to hearing those and seeing those when you get to that stage.
Would you be willing in being interviewed?
Oh, I'd love to.
Awesome. Yes, because you shared some of your story with me on email, and I was like, that's juicy. So I think it would be a great interview.
I did an interview not too long ago with John Friend. In fact, I believe last Friday was when we aired it. And John is normally the person doing the interviews, and so I could tell it was very hard for him answering questions rather than asking them, and a lot of times he would answer a question, then he'd turn around and say, "What do you think about that?" And then I'd be answering his question.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but yeah, I mean, you've got a very interesting story, and I'm sure you've written about it on your blog, which I've checked out, but I mean, it's voluminous. I haven't read everything on there, but to bring your story to a different audience, because this kind of thing where we're censored, or second-class citizenship, or you can get fired from your job or not get the promotion just because you have respect for your ancestry or history in general. I mean, that's craziness.
Do you have Confederate ancestors?
Yes, I do. Let me see. On my father's side, they all fought for the North Carolina infantry because my dad's dad was from North Carolina. And then my mom's side, she is a descendant of A.P. Hill. So I am a descendant of A.P. Hill, so that's pretty cool. And then my husband, his mom's side, they all fought in the North Carolina infantry too. And then his dad's side, I'm not sure, because I always pick on my husband when we're fighting. I tell him, because he's being a Puritan. His parents came in on some of the Mayflower, not his parents, his great-great-grandparents came in on some of the Mayflower ships and lived in Massachusetts and Vermont, and then eventually came down south. But I'm not sure about that. I think they may have had ancestors up north who paid people to fight for them.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people of means in the Union did that. Oh, well, I believe in this cause. Yay, Union. But I'll pay you to fight for me. I think that's what happened on my husband's dad's side of the family. But they're still, they've been down here a long time. They're cool now. But They have that Puritan blood.
Okay, so then did your in-laws inspire your series on Puritanism?
No, they're not at all. I just had, I don't know, I had been challenged by a reader. I had been using the phrase puritanical progressivism, and some people use a variety of that. You can read that on, some Southern tradition sites, some kind of variety of it. I think it was Robert Penn Warren who used it first, whatever. Somebody used the phrase like 100 years ago, and so people have kind of clung on to it. But I was challenged by a reader in a very civil and nice way. He's actually a friend of mine from a libertarian group I'm in, and he said, you need to explain that, because the Puritans, they were these godly people and XYZ. And I was like, you know what? I do need to explain that. If I'm using this term and I'm using it in a derogatory way, I really need to understand what I'm saying. And it's turned into this 5-part series. I still stand by my use of it now, and I have some history to back it up. But no, my in-laws, both from North Carolina. So I guess it was my my husband's grandfather or great-grandfather who came from up north.
Okay.
Yeah, I should look into that, though. That would be an interesting story right there. How these Puritans became hardened rebels, something like that.
Your blog series on Yankee Puritans is definitely one of the most interesting reads that I have had in a very long time. I believe you've got 4 of those blogs up there now, and in your last blog you said that it was going to be a 5-part series. So once the 5th part is up and running, we're going to publish all 5 parts in the Dixie Heritage Letter for our listeners and our readers to be able to see that. Of course, if you would like to see the first 4 parts ahead of our publication, just go to the Dissident Mama website, and you can read them there on Rebecca's blog directly. But on that word, we're going to go to a word from our sponsor, the Barnes Review, and then we'll be back with our guest, the Dissident Mama.
If you love listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, then I know that you'll love reading the Barnes Review. The Barnes Review is one of my favorite magazines. I began reading the Barnes Review long before they became a sponsor here on the program. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There's just not a more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So if you'll visit www.barnesreview.org, that's www.barnesreview.org, you can find out how you too can become a subscriber to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review by mail, or you can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review electronically in PDF editions. Or you can subscribe to receive both. That's what I do. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
We're back with our guest, the Dissident Mama, and she was asking me off the air about our sponsor, the Barnes Review magazine. I am a contributing editor and a writer for the Barnes Review. Have you ever read the Barnes Review magazine, Rebecca?
I have not. I'm writing it down, though.
Okay. I'm a contributing editor at the Barnes Review. Our masthead states that our magazine's purpose is to be a journal of politically incorrect thought.
Well, that sounds right up my alley. Is it a print publication or it's an online thing?
It's a magazine, but you can subscribe to it online and get PDFs.
Okay.
But it is a print magazine, and it's a bi-monthly magazine, so there are 6 issues per year.
Uh-huh.
But let's get back to our discussion of religion, and particularly how it was the religion, both North and South, that led the respective sides to their positions in the war.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like another lifetime ago now, like 15 years ago. But what you will notice is in the 1850s, the Southern churches seceded from their Northern counterparts.
Mm.
Secession is actually an ecclesiastical term. It's actually
Really?
It's a term in ecclesiastical law that the Founding Fathers adopted for their own uses during the Revolution.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so what happened is, in the 1850s, the Episcopal Church had a split, and the Southerners voted to secede from their Northern counterparts and not to take communion with them anymore and not to be in fellowship with them. The Southern Baptist and the Northern Baptist had split. The Southern Methodist and the Northern Methodist had split. The Presbyterian Church had split. And so the Southerners had formed their own denominations, their own conferences, their own communions within their denominations that were separate from their Northern counterparts.
I mean, that schism, I mean, that's amazing.
And the reason for that is because the churches of the North were departing from the fundamentals of the faith.
Yeah.
Universalism and Unitarianism were becoming prominent in the North, and the Southern churches still believed in the inerrancy of Scripture, and they still believed in literal interpretation, and they still believed in the fundamental doctrines of the faith, like the virgin birth and the second coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so they began separating from their counterparts in the North, which they considered to be apostatizing and departing from the faith.
Yeah.
And that's it was religious long before it was political.
Does this schism have a name? Has anybody coined a term?
Dr. John Weaver may have coined the term.
Okay.
Dr. Ron Rumsfeld may have coined the term, and I just didn't hear. I just wasn't privy to the minting of it.
Okay. Interesting. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. Some of the folks at Abbeville, if you were to ask them about it, they could probably point you in the right direction as to, some books you could be reading or some scholarly papers that you could be looking at to kind of get a handle on that.
Excellent. Yeah, so, and this was the 1850s, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I never really, thought. Yeah, I had talked about this difference, but yeah, are they in communion? Are they not in communion? Mm-hmm. Are they attending the same meetings and deciding the same things? Because that's very important. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, have you written about that?
I have. It's been a number of years, and I've spoken on the subject more than I've written on it. Back in the day, I used to make the rounds, and in the early 2000s, I was the division chaplain in Texas and then in Kansas for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Mm-hmm. For a brief time, I was even the acting chaplain-in-chief. Chaplain-in-chief Rumsfeld just wasn't able to carry out his duties because of health. Mm-hmm. That and at the national level, the organization's leadership was suing one another over who was and wasn't in charge. And while the two sides of that lawsuit were afraid to do anything for fear of messing up their lawsuit, there was a third group of us who just literally started doing everything.
Oh.
And I was in that group. But I was traveling during those years. For example, in Texas, there were, I think, 86 camps in Texas at that time, and I spoke during the course of a single year to all 86 of them at least once.
Wow.
So in addition to pastoring a church, I was traveling full-time just speaking at Sons of Confederate Veterans, United Daughters of the Confederacy, League of the South meetings, things of that nature.
Right.
And I used to be the director of development for the League of the South, and that caused me to be constantly on the road, going to meetings and speaking to groups. And it was a subject that I spoke on a lot. And so I spoke on it far more than I wrote on it.
Right. Well, I'll see what I can find on that. Yeah, that is intriguing.
It's still a little early in the broadcast, but we're at a good stopping point here. So let's go ahead and break for a commercial from another one of our sponsors, the American Free Press. After this brief word, we'll be back with our guest, the Dissident Mama.
If you're like me, and I'll bet you are because you're listening to the Dixie Heritage Hour, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. You like to hear about the latest financial trends and to know what's happening around the world and right here in the United States, the things that can directly impact you, your life, and the life of your family. And if you're like me, you do not rely on the mainstream media to obtain this information because, frankly, you know that you just can't trust them. Fortunately, there is an alternative news outlet with a long-established track record for honesty and integrity, and that is the American Free Press. AFP is the preeminent alternative, independent news source for honest, hard-working, truth-loving Americans. AFP is the antithesis of the controlled, lamestream media. AFP is employee-owned and has been so since its founding. Because of that, AFP never has and never will allow advertisers or special interests or big money to dictate what appears in the pages of the American Free Press newspaper. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. AFP covers the stories and tells the truth that the lamestream media is frankly scared to touch. And AFP offers real, on-the-scene reporting and commentary, the likes of which you will never see in the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or just about any other lamestream news source that you can think of. That's right, there's only one national populist news weekly staffed by an unsurpassed team of veteran investigative journalists who will dare to rip the veil off of many of the major news stories that are being censored and suppressed by the big money controlled media monopoly. And that's the American Free Press. AFP publishes exciting, in-depth, uncensored news and information that's grassroots and patriotic, information that Americans need to know in order to combat the growing police state. AFP stands firmly against the New World Order and against those who are working to establish a global plantation under the rule of a powerful few. In short, AFP is your voice. If you have any doubt why they want to silence AFP, you must be relying on the lamestream media for your news, and folks, that's a big mistake. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
And we're back with the Dissident Mama here on TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. Rebecca, we've talked a little bit about your blog, and we've talked about some of the things that you're writing in the blog. But why don't you tell us how our listeners can actually go online and find your blog, how to read your blog? What is your website, and what is your contact? What your website is, and how we can get to it?
DissidentMama.net.
And that's M-A-M-A?
Yeah, M-A-M-A.
Okay.
What's funny is a lot of people comment like, oh, you spelled that right. And I'm thinking, is there a different way to spell it? Yeah, M-A-M-A. And there's buttons at the top to be able to, connect with me on Facebook and Twitter. Gab, I don't think there's a button on there for that. Gab is button led yet. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm never on Gab. It's Twitter's rough. I mean, there's a lot of dark stuff on there, but Gab is very dark, so it kind of depresses me to go on there. So I'm not on there very much. The best way to reach me would be to email me through the website, which you're able to do via dissidentmama.net. Contact me through Facebook. Please follow me on Facebook. Comment. I'm to the point where I'm not super famous, so I can have conversations with people, and I try to comment on anything people put on my Facebook page. And so if you like something, didn't like something, want me to write about something, think I got something wrong but got something else right, whatever. I want to have a conversation with people because, human beings are thirsting for this kind of thing. And, so far it's been pretty civil on there. And, I would just love it if people could take part in the conversation, subscribe to my newsletter. I send out a little newsletter every time I write a new blog, just kind of, it's a little personal sometimes, just so people know, there's a real human behind this cracked cow skull, and, she's just not some weirdo. She's a real person, so I do that, and, yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. Well, hopefully everybody will check that out here in the next few days, and you'll get a big wave of hits to your Facebook and your website.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I know we're taking quick breaks to commercials in this broadcast. One good thing about that, though, is that we'll have a long period of time at the end where we won't have to break for commercials, and we'll be able to talk at length. But let's go quickly now to one more commercial. And then we'll be back with our guest.
Burger one might be crazy, but I ain't dumb. Crazy cooter coming at you. Hey, y'all, got your ears on? Well, I got some news for you. We're here at our brand new Cooters in the Country store in Sperryville, Virginia. Good old Sperryville, where Cooters started many years ago. Folks are coming from all over Hazard County, and we're going to have a grand old time with good music, good food, and best of all, good friends. Hope y'all can be there. Whoop, whoop, here come Enos. Huck got Cletus with her. I'm down and I'm gone.
We're back with our guest, Rebecca, the Dissident Mama. And I want to kind of change the direction of our conversation for just the next few moments. It's my belief, and I've preached myself hoarse on this for 20 years, is that Southern culture and Southern heritage is not statues and flags. Mm-hmm. And so the liberals can take down every last statue and they can burn every last flag, and they can't take away our heritage and our culture if we simply pass it down to the next generation.
Absolutely.
The monuments are best symbols of the culture and the heritage.
Yeah.
So we're basically talking about passing our faith down to our children and our culture down to our children and so forth. But
which is why the family's under attack,
right?
You know? Because people know the sway that parents have over their children, which is why they want them not with their parents very much.
Yeah. Which is why I really appreciate all of the work that you and your husband are doing to advocate homeschooling in the Southern culture and within the Southern community. And I've spoken to several homeschool mothers who are telling me that they're using your blog as part of their homeschool curriculum. And so you're not just having an influence on the political level. On the national level, you're also having an influence at the home level.
And that's one of the things, you know, I've just, my blog's only a year old, you know, I've just, you know, have really gotten back into, you know, wanting to, I guess, like you said, kind of be an activist or whatever, but be forthright about all the things in my life, my beliefs that I find are important. And just to find out people that have been doing this for so long and they still do it and they still have hope, you know, because sometimes, you know, I'm sure you're like this. Sometimes you just want to throw your hands up and be like, I'm done with all these crazy people. I'm going to live, you know, on an island somewhere where nobody can be near me. You know, it just gets so demoralizing sometimes. And so it's really great to hear about people fighting the good fight. That's why I got to meet, like Clyde Wilson and Don Livingston at that Abbeville conference a few weeks ago. And just, they've been doing this a long time and they're still speaking truth. And it's very inspiring to me. Yeah, because I'm a newbie in the grand scheme of things, you know, total newbie.
Regular readers of your blog wouldn't think of you as a newbie. In fact, as I read your blog, I mean, you're right there in the thick of things, especially after that whole debacle in Charlottesville. Yeah,
what do you think about that? It's like, I almost went to Charlottesville, okay? I live only a couple of hours from there. I knew Richard Spencer was going to be there. I knew it had kind of been co-opted to a degree, but, you know, I was like, the media is not going to tell what happens. I mean, I didn't know it was going to be as crazy as it was, but I was like, it's going to be nuts. My brother-in-law's a cop. He actually said, don't go. But I was like, will you come with me? And he said, don't go. The reason I brought that up is like, you know, they're there at the Lee Monument. You know, Richard Spencer has said, from my knowledge, I don't care about Lee. Yes, we are using this. You know, they're very good at using media manipulative things, you know, so they can get more press and stuff. It was a big tent there. You know, I know some libertarians that went, you know, there were secessionists, there were, you know, like you were saying, like League of the South people. There were just, you know, statue people. And, you know, one dude had a swastika. One guy, you know, and they would have said, the media would have said there were swastikas all over the place anyway, even if that didn't happen. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes the Southern traditional people spend so much time saying we're not those people that we're just too exhausted to fight the real enemy. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I'm not a white supremacist. I think the Klan is ridiculously stupid, you know. I'm definitely not for, you know, as a kind of limited to anti-government person. I definitely don't want an ethno-state. I mean, heck, that's still a state. So, you know, to me, like, secession is smaller and better, and people can live with whoever the heck they want to live with. But I feel like sometimes we just get so wrapped up in saying we're not those people, and I don't know. They all hate Marxism too, even though some of them are National Socialists. So I'm like, we kind of have a common enemy, but that's just a hard sell to people to say we have a common enemy and we can deal with the ramifications of all this after we get rid of the Marxists.
Right.
I don't know. You've been in this a lot longer than me. I mean, is it something we have to deter that? But I don't think it can be, because we agree on some issues with them, right?
This is kind of what I'm doing, okay?
Okay.
I don't, you know, during the campaign, you know, Anderson Cooper and, you know, some of the people at CNN, they were constantly hounding Trump that he had to denounce certain people.
Right.
And finally, after however many days, he relented and said, okay, I denounce them, you know.
Right.
And then they complained that he took too long to denounce them or whatever. You know, I've never denounced them.
Right.
Have no intention of doing it.
Yeah.
In fact, I kind of agree with you that, you know, why even call attention to them?
Exactly.
But the reason I will do something occasionally, and when we start talking about, the pink swastika.
Well, that's a very stealth way to do it. It's really smart.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm not really denouncing them.
You're not.
And I'm not even really talking about them. I'm just talking about something that will hit close to home with them and make them mad. In other words, I'm kind of reminding them that, hey, you know what? I'm not one of you.
Right.
And kind of letting them know that, hey, if you want to whatever, you can listen, you can whatever, you can hang out, you can watch our show, you can buy a ticket, you can buy my books.
Right.
Because, the truth is to some degree, I don't know that we gain anything by quote unquote denouncing them. Because, right. I mean, sometimes there is strength in numbers, and sometimes their numbers are, sometimes it's good to have a crowd.
Yeah.
And why do I want to, you denounce them, and Trump realized this, he denounced them too strongly. There might only be a few thousand voters, but there's still a few thousand voters he would lose.
Right.
In my case, there may only be a few hundred of them every year that buy my books, but, that's still a couple $1,000s of income that potentially I'm losing if they're not buying my books this year.
So. Plus, it comes down to you can never denounce them enough, or strongly enough, or you never do it right, So it's like the denouncing never stops. It's not like, okay, I can just do this, and then I can get back to my thing. Yeah. I follow a lot of libertarians, and there are right-leaning libertarians, and there are left-leaning libertarians, and a lot of the people I like, there was this libertarian thing going around after Charlottesville saying that you needed to sign, all these like opinion makers needed to sign it to denounce Nazism and fascism. And like Tom Woods is one of the guys I follow, and he said, if my work doesn't speak to the fact that I'm not for fascism or Nazism, then I don't care. No, I'm not signing something. I mean, it's so show trialish, it's just very frightening. And, just because they believe the libertarians that I like that, like Jeff Deist at the Mises Institute gave a speech once, and he talked about blood and soil. And he's like, this is why borders are important to some libertarians, because libertarians are supposed to be all no borders and all this kind of thing. But, culture matters, language matters, blood, soil, tradition matters. Well, Hitler said blood and soil once, so now poor old Jeff Deist has been called a Nazi by other libertarians. It's just like, what world am I living in?
Well, that's another reason that we're going to do, like the pink swastika broadcast.
That sounds great.
Because, okay, like for example, the upcoming issue of the Barnes Review, there's an article, and basically a chemist is explaining why Zyklon B gas could not have been used for mass extermination.
Huh. Okay.
That it was the science of it just doesn't pan out.
Okay.
But what it would have done is you put somebody in a shower room, spray them with hot water that has the Zyklon B gas, coming out with it.
Okay.
And what you would do is you would kill all the lice on that person.
Okay.
So in other words, those mass extermination chambers in the concentration camps.
Oh, we're to get rid of the lice.
Yeah, they weren't to put 100 people into the shower room and kill them all.
Right.
It was to get all the lice off of them before they put them into the, So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but and then there's another article in there which is a review of a book that was written not too long ago called "The Artist Within the Warlord." Mm-hmm. Hitler was a prolific artist.
Right. Yeah, I knew he had gone to art school or whatever.
Yeah, and he did, and so like a lot of the sculptures and a lot of the buildings and so forth. A lot of the monuments that the Nazis were building, he actually drew them and designed them.
Huh.
And he was constantly sketching, constantly, drawing, constantly painting. And so, a totally different side of and the fact that you write an article pointing that fact out doesn't change the rest of history.
Right. That's the thing. The kid gloves with some things. That's why, like, But
the bottom line is we put stuff like that out in the Barnes Review. We're automatically going to be accused of being a bunch of neo-Nazi, anti-Semitic, whatever. So you do a thing like the pink swastika article and the pink swastika interview. Yeah, it
If
kind
you say
of.
Bolshevik now, did you know that? Like if you say Bolshevik now, which I talk a lot about modern Bolsheviks, that's anti-Semitic. And I'm like, well, it's not my fault a lot of Bolsheviks were Jews. That's history. Sorry, dude. But Bolshevism was evil. So you do with that what you want. I mean, what is it that I heard is Nazis the other day? Calling people elitist cosmopolitans is now anti-Semitic because so many Jews are elitist cosmopolitans. I'm like,
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, did you hear what happened the other day to Wayne LaPierre?
Well, some I may not have heard this. What?
Okay,
Just
Wayne
that he's
LaPierre
more-
is now anti-Semitic.
Oh no.
Yeah, because
Why?
he gave that speech here a couple weeks ago after the shooting,
Okay.
and he called out the names of a bunch of political players.
That's right. Yes, and they all happen to be
And they all happen to be Jewish. And he had no idea. He's like, I had no idea they were Jewish. Half of them.
I had heard about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's not his fault, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I go off on women all the time, all sorts of horrible women that do horrible things and radical feminists and all these crazy activists that live today. It doesn't mean I hate all women, but, a lot of women have lost their minds. Do with that what you want. It doesn't mean I'm a misogynist,
Right. You know what my comeback to misogyny is?
What?
Is I need to find a good misogynist because I've got a really tight neck right now.
Yep. I could use a good misogynist myself. Oh. Yeah, and that's what I do with the patriarchy too. Like I tell these women, on social media or whatever, I'm like, you want the patriarchy. I'm done saying, patriarchy isn't, a tool of oppression or whatever. I'm just like, patriarchy's awesome. I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm a stay-at-home mom. My husband slaves away so I can homeschool my kids in PJs all day long and write a blog about anything I want to, and he does all the computer work on it. I'm like, the patriarchy's pretty awesome.
Yep.
He has the short end of the stick on that one.
So do you have, because I always for years thought of homeschooling as kind of a kind of a Christian, kind of a fundamentalist, kind of a whatever thing.
They were the early pioneers. Every homeschooler today, even if they're pagan crazy people, needs to think those because they.
That's what I was going to say. There's a lot of those pagan crazy people in the homeschooling movement now.
Yeah.
Are you starting to see those in your homeschool groups, or not quite in your part of the country yet?
Probably not in our part of the country. I'm sure there's some little pockets, but I'm in a Christian homeschool co-op. We do classical education. Maybe it's just because I run in Christian homeschool circles, but all the homeschoolers I know are Christians. Even if I go to like conferences, that are in North Carolina, I'd say well over 90% of those people are Christian. There might be some kind of hippie people running around. The speakers are mostly Christian. However, I have a friend at church who is moving out to Washington State. I do not know why. And she homeschools, and she's found 2 homeschool communities near her house. One is for LGBTs, and one is for pagans. So it's literally called like the pagan homeschoolers or something.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, that's what happens when you move to Washington State. So I'm sure in California and in Oregon and all those hit places, whatever, it's rampant with crazy left-wingers. But around here, it's mostly Christian. And then you have some people, like before I became a Christian, I knew I was going to homeschool. I was already on that conservative path, but I was like, I don't want the government, indoctrinating my kids and all this kind of stuff. So you have just some of those people who might not be hardcore Christians going to church all the time. They're probably like, they believe in God, but they're not left-wingers too. So you have like this whole libertarian thing too, where people are just like, I'm going to teach my kids because I don't want government teaching them. So it's a big mishmash, but I'd say most people are still Christian.
Florida's probably one of the easiest states in the country to set up a Christian school in.
Yeah.
And so the government pretty much stays out of your business. And Florida's also one of the easiest states in the country to homeschool in.
Yeah, I've heard that they have very little regulation.
In fact, what the state of Florida is doing now is they've put the public school curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
They've put the public school curriculum online.
Okay.
So pretty much anybody who... now, homeschoolers do not have to use it. If you use any part of the homeschool... if you use any part of the state curriculum, if you log on and you complete any of the assignments within it...
Right.
Then you can take the tests. And if you can pass whatever the tests are, for that year at the end of the year...
Right.
Then the state of Florida will actually transcribe grade completion.
Oh, they'll do some of the work for you. That's cool.
Yeah. And so then in high school and stuff, which is what a lot of the high schoolers are doing now in the high school curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And then have them take the test at the end of the year. And then they get transcribed for, that year of high school.
Right.
And the state will actually give them a diploma when they graduate from high school.
Okay.
And so they will act, and so and not all the homeschoolers do it, but some of them, a lot of colleges base their entrance on SAT scores and stuff.
Right.
But, it does, and I know there were also some homeschoolers also that would, enroll their kid in a Christian school just so that they could have a quote-unquote diploma or whatever at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in Florida, you can actually get a high school diploma from the state.
It's nice to have the option, You don't have to do it, but if you want to, here it is. I like that.
Yeah. So, and that's actually been a growing thing in Florida, is the number of people who were doing that, and even the number of parents who, for whatever reason, have just taken their kids out of the public school, and they're not people who would have been traditional homeschoolers.
Yeah.
And literally, their homeschool is they plop their kid in front of the computer every day, and they get the same curriculum.
Yeah.
I say they get the same curriculum. That a lot of the curriculum isn't what's in the books. It's what you're getting from the teacher and from the other students and
right
and so forth. And so a lot of the really bad stuff in the curriculum isn't actually in the books yet.
Right.
And so
those are the mandatory assemblies for oh, today we have one of our kids coming out as a girl who's really a boy. I mean, there was actually a elementary school in Greensboro, North Carolina, that had a 7 or 8 year old. It was a boy. He decided he wanted to be a girl, and they had this big assembly celebrating.
Okay.
I'm like, what? Yeah. I mean, it's not funny. I mean, those poor kids, they're just being treated like... And it's not even social experiments. They're being treated like guinea pigs. It's just really horrible. But, so stuff like that. So you don't have to be subjected to those mandatory, diversity assemblies or whatever they're called.
Right.
How close are you to Pensacola?
Oh, man. Let's see. Probably about 5-hour drive.
Okay. Because Pensacola Bible college or Christian school, whatever it's called, they create a Becca homeschool curriculum, which is, really fundamentalist homeschool curriculum that some of the people I know use it. I haven't liked much of it, but whatever. It's really popular. It's called a Becca. But that is the college that kid, remember the kid who went to Charlottesville and he was dressed in the gray uniform and he armed himself because you're allowed to open carry in Virginia. And he just
got expelled from there.
He got expelled from there. He lives in High Point, which is 30 minutes from my house.
And I just want to go ahead and insert here for the record that myself personally and our radio broadcast generally is not endorsing, nor are we supporters of, nor do we agree with Pensacola Christian College. In fact, I wouldn't even send my dog there to water their flowers, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, they're big time whatever the government tells us we do. I mean, they're just lapdogs. Which is why I don't like a lot of their curriculum. It's too, Abraham Lincoln's wonderful, yay, all this kind of stuff. I can't take that anymore. I'm like, what's the point of homeschooling if you're going to be using that junk? So I was wondering if you knew the vibe there. Okay, it's all coming together now. I
was there one day, and Dr. Horton pulled a couple of his teachers out of the luncheon. Because he didn't want them to answer my questions. And he didn't want to have me removed because that would have made a statement that he didn't want to make either.
You're right.
But what had happened was, and we were homeschooling at the time, and we were actually using their curriculum. And so I had asked the guy who was doing their history stuff, and I asked him. I said, you realize that Robert E. Lee was a Christian, and you realize that Robert E. Lee never owned slaves, and that when he inherited some, he immediately freed them, and Stonewall Jackson, whatever. And he's like, yeah. And I said, you realize that Ulysses S. Grant was a slaveholder and refused to free his slaves even after the war. We got to talk about the Emancipation Proclamation and how,
Right.
Lincoln, left the slaves in the North as though this proclamation had never been issued. And,
Right.
and so it was all of a sudden the symposium just, ceased.
Right.
Well, then a couple months later, there was another one, and I was there, and it was a luncheon. And I'm sitting next to, and I can't remember his name now, but I recognized him because he was in some of our son's science videos, because we were using the video curriculum.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, I want to ask you a question. I said, are you a Bible believer? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, do you believe that every word of the Bible is literally true? And he said, well, yes, I do. I said, are you a King James Bible believer? He says, are you asking if I'm King James only? I said, yes. To which he replied, he said, well, yeah, that's the position of our school.
Right.
I said, I didn't ask you the position of the school. Are you King James only? And, the president of the school is like sitting across the table from us. And so he's like, well, yes. I said, so then you believe that every word of the King James Bible is literally true? And he says, well, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, so you guess so or you know so? He's like, well, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, I'm a fundamentalist. I believe the Bible is literally true. He said, and I believe the King James Bible. I'm like, okay. I said, then why are you saying in my kid's science video that whales are mammals?
Oh.
He goes, because they are. I says, but Jesus said that they were fish. He's like, no, he didn't. Funny thing is I don't think that Dr. Horton knew where this was going yet, but the head of their Bible department at the time was Dr. Dell Johnson, and he was within earshot, and I could tell by the look on his face he knew exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
And so he's sliding down now. He's wanting to hear how this conversation plays out. And so I said, yes, he did. I said, the Bible says his Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. And he says, well, yeah, but that doesn't say that whales are fish or that they're not mammals. That just says that Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale. I said, yeah. I said, but the same King James Bible that in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus called a whale, said it was a whale that swallowed up Jonah. I said, let's go back to the book of Jonah. What does it say? That God prepared a great fish? I said, Jesus, do you think that Jesus knew? If Jesus is the one who created that fish that swallowed up Jonah, and then he calls it a whale, do you think he knew what he created?
Right.
And he said something to the effect of, well, that's just a slight, contradiction in translation or whatever. Right. I said, but a moment ago you told me that you literally believed every word of the King James Bible was true.
And what did he say?
The president of the college looked at him and said, we got to go wherever, and they excused themselves and they left the room, and the conversation was never finished.
Yeah.
And so the head of the Bible department, Dr. Johnson, he looked at me, he said, Dr. DeVries, he said, do you believe every word of the King James Bible is literally true? I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, do you believe that whales are fish and not mammals? I said, yes, sir, I do. I also believe I also believe in geocentrism.
Yeah. Yeah. What did he say to that?
And he said, well, I guess if you believe the King James Bible is literally true, you'd have to.
There you go.
I said, and I told him, I said, I also believe in unicorns. And
at this point, they're running away from you as quickly as possible, and you're laughing.
Yeah. Because, okay, like if you read like the NIV Bible commentary, it says that where it says unicorns was a mistranslation, and that they were probably rhinoceroses. Now, the guy that translated great portions of the Old Testament there, his name was Miles. The guy was like the greatest intellect in the Hebrew language of his day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just one of the greatest intellects of his day, period. I'm pretty sure he knew the difference between a unicorn and a rhinoceros.
Yeah.
And as you know, most things from mythology, there's some basis of truth to it.
Yeah, I'm critical of Christians a lot, because, we're supposed to stand for truth. It's not just the truth of Jesus. I mean, it is truth, if somebody's pushing moral relativism and it makes you feel better because you're part of the crowd, I mean, to me, that is not a thing a Bible-believing Christian should do. So, yeah, I give Christians a lot of grief sometimes, which probably loses me some Christian readers. But I'm just like, either we're into truth or we're not. Just pick a team and then let's move forward with this. Because I do feel like sometimes I'm battling like my own people, and it just is very frustrating. Yeah, which is why I would love to interview Alan Armentrout, the kid who got sent away from the Pensacola College. I think I found his phone number once and then just never made the call, but be like, it'd be cool to be like, a year later, what have you been doing? Do you regret doing it? But that poor kid, man, he was just standing up there, didn't say a word, and just people were treating him like trash. And this is just horrifying. It's like, no, you ally with the kid standing there with the gun quietly saluting an American hero. You don't ally with the people screaming the F word at him and calling him a Nazi, and flipping him off in his face. And the only reason they didn't beat him up was because he had a daggone gun, and then they wanted to get mad about that. I'm like, well, that's why he wasn't beaten to a pulp.
Well,
that's why we're fighting the good fight, right?
Well, once again, Rebecca, we are out of time. Let me just say this has been one of the funnest interviews that I have done in the short time that I've had the privilege of being the host of TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour. I definitely look forward to maybe having you again sometime. So what I need you to do for me is I need you to write something really controversial so that we can have a good excuse for bringing you back again.
Well, chances of me writing something controversial are good.
Okay.
Which is why I chose the name Dissident.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, I would love to interview you sometime. And I think I expressed this in one of the emails to you. But being a stay-at-home homeschool mom, baseball season, I don't get to things as quickly as I would like to. But I do always get to them. So I would love to interview you sometime this year.
Okay. Just let me know when you want to do that, and I'll figure out a time to sit down.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you so much, Ed, and yeah, stay in touch.
And I definitely will be staying in touch with Rebecca. In fact, I've already contacted her again to try to set up another interview. I don't know when we'll do it. It's not going to be a full program, probably just a segment that we'll include into another broadcast, but I definitely do look forward to talking to Rebecca again. I also look forward to running a series of articles in the coming weeks that Rebecca has written on her own blog there at the Dissident Mama website. And it's a 5-part series. So far, she's written 4 of the 5. And I'm looking forward to getting all 5 parts up there on our Dixie Heritage newsletter website once they've been written and completed. Another thing that we're working on here at Dixie Heritage is the Dixie Heritage t-shirt. I saw over at Dissident Mama, they've got Dissident Mama t-shirts. And so what I want to do is I want to make up a Dixie Heritage radio show t-shirt. And maybe I'll mail one to Rebecca and she'll mail me back one of her Dissident Mama t-shirts. Maybe we could swap t-shirts there. But when we got those t-shirt designs ready, I'll let you know about those in an upcoming broadcast. You can wear those and let all your friends and maybe even some of your enemies know that you're a listener to the Dixie Heritage Hour. Go to our website, www.dixieheritage.net. Check out our website. Check out the past issues of our newsletter. And then subscribe to our newsletter. All you have to do is click the subscribe button or click the button to request a free copy of my book, The Truth About the Confederate Battle Flag. And when you do, you'll be automatically signed up for our newsletter. The book is free. The newsletter's free. So you're not going to have to give us your credit card number. We're not going to ask for your phone number. We're not going to ask for your mailing address. We're not going to sell your information to anybody. We're not going to get information from you to sell. You literally just give us your email address and we start sending you a really great newsletter every week. You'll enjoy it. So until next week, on behalf of all of us here at TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Hour, We look forward to being with you again next week. God bless.